Heal Your Shit is a podcast for anyone curious about why life throws us curveballs. We're all about digging into the connections between mind, body, and soul, but we keep it real. Because, let's be honest, being human can be one wild ride. Once you understand your shit, healing it becomes a whole lot easier. Hi, welcome to Heal Your Shit podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Laura.
And I'm Olaf. So for me, I went to a space in my life where it was so much suffering that I just couldn't bear with it. So I basically had to choose between becoming a bitter old man or start healing my shit. So for me, that path went through a lot of different modalities, but what I work mostly with today is de-armoring and IFS and inner child healing in different ways. So I have sessions with couples or individual sessions, and I also hold workshops.
And I'm Laura, and I started this journey, I guess, because of my depression, and I worked through it. And thanks to that, I have a lot of insight. I became a coach, a trauma-informed coach. So I help people to spot traumas in their life and work deeper elsewhere, maybe during de-armoring with you. So that's me. Welcome to our show.
Go.
And today we're going to talk about generational trauma. It's called also ancestral trauma or intergenerational trauma. It's same shit, right?
Yep, different names.
Different names, same shit, exactly. And we're going to first of all, talk about what it is exactly and how you can work with it.
Yeah.
So obviously we're all born to different circumstances, and it's might be abusive families. There might be cultural background that's difficult, like poverty or war and so on and so on. But most of all, we are born into certain families that carry some burdens, we could say, even over time. And unfortunately or fortunately, because from one side, this is like a healing journey, and it's kind of also empowering journey when you actually address it.
Yeah, it could be also part of our purpose.
Exactly, part of our purpose, right? But it is difficult to heal the trauma that's not ours, but it's passed from one generation to another. It's also not so easy to spot it, but when you start to analyze your family, like how things are happening in that family, you might spot these.
Yeah, to spot the tendencies, but also to see the burdens, but also treasures, the gold that's buried in that, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's important to know that if the trauma happened in, for example, your mom's family, let's say grandmother, and then passed to your mom, the thing that happened to your grandmother will have a ripple effect. So it's going to affect the people around her. It's going to affect her children. But it's also going to be transferred in a biological way through the cells,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So if the child was born and that trauma occurred before the child was born, that's going to be passed down to another generation. There are many researches about that around epigenetics. Actually, there are several studies with mice where they put either the mother or the father into a stressful, traumatic situation. And what happens is, even if we take away the father and just the mother, is with her offspring, the traumatic experience will be transferred from one generation to another, and it's going to go on for 5 generations. So this is something extremely mind-blowing, I think, because we can measure it now.
Yeah, and I think it was the same study that you're referring to.
Okay.
That they actually separated the mice children from the mother to make sure that they don't communicate somehow.
Yeah.
But even if you separate, you take the children away from birth, they still carry the same trauma.
Yeah. It doesn't matter.
And so that's so fascinating. And it talks to how deep it runs into us. We come in with these burdens or these gifts from our family line. And we're, delving deeper into that with the science, the research today. And it's fascinating.
And I'm very grateful and happy that actually science also takes care of that and sees some things that happen to our grandparents or us as parents will be transferred to other generations. It's important that we take care of it, right?
Yeah, what they don't heal, we need to start healing.
Yeah, exactly. So
we don't pass it on.
Yeah, so basically, to sum it up, the generational trauma is about passing a traumatic experience that happened in the past to another generation.
Yeah, and that could be a lot of different traumatic events that's passed through, that's been given from father line to father line or coming from the mother line. And then we get born and it affects us in this lifetime. And it's very obvious that if you had grandparents that's been through war, and you see that, you can see if somebody been in war and been traumatized by war, and that effect might lessen a little bit to the next line, and it might lessen a little bit, but it's still carried as a burden.
Yeah.
In your, almost like in your bones.
I mean, especially if that trauma was not processed by the other generations. But the thing is that, if we think about 50, 60 years ago, people would not even speak about, the word trauma would not exist. Nobody would take care of it or even think that this is going to affect everyone.
And I think there were just this word from the First World War on shell shock.
Ah, okay.
And that's the way it was, and I don't think they had, to my knowledge, they didn't have any treatment for it. But just imagine how long we have come in the process of understanding what this actually does to our nervous system when we're exposed to that kind of intense experiences and how we can start healing that.
It's hard to make experiments with people, obviously, but there were so many papers written about how people who went through Holocaust and had children and grandchildren, how it still affected the different generations.
And also, just to take that as an example, I think that's very useful. If you had a grandfather that was in the Second World War, that's going to affect his relationship to your father. So he's probably going to be maybe withdrawal, maybe have anger, flashing up, and then that is going to make your father have a difficult situation with connecting to you because he doesn't trust that he hasn't had those resources given to him. So, and then it's just passed on unconsciously. And that's what I'm also trying to get through here. That the first step is to be aware, become aware of those tendencies with ourselves and in the family line to see that.
Also, what you just said about your father didn't have the tools to connect with you and so on. I think many times when we process this kind of trauma that's passed from one generation to another, we actually don't realize it. And we say, oh, I'm not going to be like my father. I'm not going to act like my mother, we're just seeing the bad stuff, not connecting it to the bigger background.
Yeah, and the risk with that is say that your father has this kind of pattern.
Yeah.
And then you go to the other side that I'm not going to be that, but then it's only a reaction to how he was. So you're still living in a reactive pattern, and that means that you haven't healed it. Yeah. So you continue to carry it.
So it's kind of we need to take that responsibility if we want to heal it and then pass it to our children or grandchildren. So take that responsibility and actually say, okay, there's this trauma been in my family.
Yeah.
I need to take a look at it at least.
Yeah. And if the trauma is disconnection, it's always healed through connection. And it might not be able to heal from you to your father.
No.
But from you to your son.
It is trauma that's passed, but with trauma, there are patterns that are passed from one generation to another.
Yes. And there could be also a pattern of entrepreneurship. Yeah. That could be a very beautiful thing to be passed down. And So it's easier for you to create your own business. You have a sense of independence, but that could come with the shadow side of not being attuned, or like running a business. Maybe you're, busy all the time. You work a lot, so you don't actually get that emotional closeness with your children. So that could be like in a package. So you don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater, but you need to bring both aspects to your awareness.
So basically, if we think in the context of trauma, it could be that your grandfather, who was a great entrepreneur, he started it because of some kind of trauma, for example. And then, that triggered it, like we spoke in another episode about Arnold Schwarzenegger. And
yes,
like he got there, but it's because of his trauma. So that could be the trigger. And then, as you say, like there's package.
Yeah.
So it's always like two sides of the coin, right?
It is. Sometimes we need to look at the traumas that happened to us in our childhood before we actually can go in and do the ancestral healing. Because that could be so alive that we don't really get access to that level.
But I mean, it's so connected, I feel. Because if I think about, like, for example, my own traumas, like the rejection, I can see the pattern. My mother had there's such a huge trauma in my family. Like grandpa was like abusive and alcohol, and there was like a huge trauma pattern passed from one generation to another. And also, like, there were patterns of being in a relationship with abusive people who were addicted to alcohol.
Yeah.
So there's trauma repeating, but also there's a pattern repeating. And I feel like if I'm looking into my own trauma, I have to be aware also that there's something behind that. Like, there's a reason why I got that.
Some people need to first go through a phase of like rejecting or being angry with their own parents.
Yeah.
Saying, you didn't do this for me, or you were like that, or
okay, yeah.
da. And so you have to move through that phase, and then you're like open yourself to see like, oh, they went through this, because it becomes like a humbleness or like they had their shit to meet, you know,
like realizing the heaviness of their burdens.
Yes.
I think it's easier for us to understand that when we become parents.
Oh, yeah. I agree with that. Yeah. I think there's so much learnings to have your own child, and also for me just to watch how my parents interact with my child, both in beautiful ways and gratifying ways, but also it's like, oh, I recognize that pattern from my father. Like, don't cry, like immediate distraction.
Yeah.
And just like, okay, stop. First we comfort. And then we can distract.
I can relate to that. Like, there can be conflicts arising around that. I remember that when my daughter, she was smaller, and my mother knew, like, no, you should do it that way. And I'm like, no.
Oh, yeah.
We're doing it my way.
Yeah.
And then if you want to distract her, of course, but like there must be this emotional connection, and we cannot make it like shallow, because that's what can actually create more trauma. Like we spoke about it in the last episode, right?
Yeah.
Nothing happened. It's nothing.
Exactly. And there's so many, I mean, also like, we're not going to dive too deep into the parenting.
Yeah.
But many of us have also experienced being sent to the room when you actually need to be seen and regulated and felt. And instead of like taking the conflict and saying, okay, this is how I feel, this is what I need you to do, or whatever, they send us away. And just that is a cut that's very uncomfortable for our nervous system. And it's like, okay, the adult gets to, remain, and you get sent off to your room.
You get removed.
Yeah, you get removed.
Yeah, but then again, when we think from a perspective of an adult, we know that if the parents were behaving that way, that shows their trauma.
Exactly.
That's passed from their parents. So there's the generational lining.
And that was even probably worse. With spanking or things like that, or more physical abuse, or even more like send you away over the summer to some other family that I know, like from my father, and just like being away and being
pushed out.
Yeah.
Yeah. maybe trauma could be like also connected to abuse, and then you have shame, and then you pass it to other generations. And there are multiple examples we could give probably, but I think what's very important now is like how to break it, right? Yeah. Because like you might hear these stories, so you just are aware that something happened, you know, there was abuse, there was like hunger, poverty, different stuff that could influence your family. And I think the first step is to be aware of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think after awareness, what can come to you is, like you said, like different emotions. Oh, you're angry. Why did they do it? Like, this is terrible. I have terrible parents. I don't want to be like you, right?
Yeah, and I mean, also just to help yourself to maybe draw the diagram on how was your relationship with your father and your mother, and what was that? And then you can investigate about their relationship, you know, to understand, oh, maybe the dynamic came from there.
Yeah.
That could also be a way to trace it back the lines, even if, you know, that could sometimes be hard. If we could get that information, it could be so helpful to understand.
It is super helpful. I remember one of my clients, we went through that journey, and actually we mapped it. We mapped the whole family, siblings, mother, father, grandparents, and we mapped it. And we could see how, even like with a simple tool, like how you put your parents and grandparents in which direction, how big they are, like what kind of shape do you, like what face do you put on it? Yeah. You know, like we could see what happened there, because like the grandfather was very distant because something happened, something very traumatic happened to him. Second World War, he was sent to a gulag, which is like the Russian equivalent, prison camp. And there was total shutdown of emotions. That's why this and this happened in the family. We could see it visually through that little exercise. So I think when you try to connect these dots, that's like the aha moment.
Yeah.
Right? That you can see like, okay, there it is. My mother had a bad relationship with me because her mother, they had a bad relationship because something happened here, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And to see that is also often like a rupture with some trauma or with some relationship. And then what we tend to do is we're keeping life together, you know? Yeah. We're like denying, disowning our own emotions. And then we do the same with our children. And they do the same with their children. And then it get passed on. Yeah. So it's also a matter of bringing this softness and tenderness both to ourselves, but also this forgiveness and this like realization of like this human life is hard, man. And see, you know, like, oh, they've been through their shit, you know, and sometimes they managed to heal a little bit of it, but often that was done unconsciously, that they haven't been able to like fully embrace and understand and go through the emotions that needed to be expressed or felt or seen and done the healing work with.
Yeah, I find it super important, that phase, like when you're allowing to feel and like embracing it, despite it might be like ugly and like uncomfortable in a way, but like you're sitting there with all of that stuff and just embracing it and say, okay, I'll just take care of that, you know? Yeah. Because maybe your parents, maybe your grandparents didn't have the tools that you have right now, and you're able to do it. And like you said, they might actually profit, like feel that shift in a way when you do the work, right? Yeah. Because I saw it in my mom. Like when I started to do my work, I could see in her like a huge shift despite her not doing it, right? And I was like, wow, what's happening?
Yeah, and I mean, from a shamanic perspective also, our grandparents all are grateful for us doing this work. I find that to be a very like soothing, comforting aspect, aspect of this work, like to really understand the depth of what we're doing. We're changing the timelines in a way.
Yeah, I think Teal's one also speaks about it, that ancestral healing and changing, like, you know, the trajectory of the whole generation. So the fact is, like, even if there's just one generation ahead of us, it still matters, right?
Oh yeah,
it's huge.
And I mean, it's so huge because, say, for example, that your family have a big issue around disconnection, or like absent fathers, say. And then you have a son. And when you choose to go in and do the work with yourself, you don't pass that on. And that child get to experience a myriad of other things. And you know, the beauty of that, the release of that is just amazing. It's like you dripping a drop in the water of the cosmos, and it ripples through the entire universe. Yeah.
But yeah, I totally agree with that. And I just feel like also there's this phase, like when you do that, you also allow yourself to grieve for all these people, you know, for what they've been through, but also for you, what you've been through, because that affected you. I think there's huge part of it, like allowing it, accepting it, but also like grieving it, so that it can bring you to a closure, right?
Yeah. So it's both with the intergenerational, and it's also like the grief between the sexes, like the men and women, how much hurt we caused each other. Like going back through the generation lines, you know, and to see that, what a struggle. And also, you know, just all the energy and all the synchronicity that had taken place for you to be born to this life. Just those little things that open is sort of like a magic box to say, wow, I'm here and I get to do this work for all of us.
Yeah, that's super inspiring. Also, like realizing that this doesn't define us.
Yeah.
I mean, it does in a way, like until you realize it, right?
Yeah.
And then when you realize it, you can let it go.
Yeah, that's also the importance of doing the work, to actually be centered in yourself and to feel that you're actually curious. What happened? What do I feel? Why do I act this way? And because if you come from a place of wanting to change things too quickly, it tends to just like bounce away or hide away or go down deeper into that.
I'm also thinking about the patterns. That's something that's bouncing back.
Yeah.
Because like I see in my family, we have like 3 generations of, at least on my mom's side, and then her mother, of a single woman raising children. And I see it as a huge pattern, and like just the awareness of it and understanding where it comes from and so on, because it comes from a trauma. I don't want that for my daughter, you know? I wish that, because I cannot change this now anymore. I cannot, because that's how it is for now. But I really would like for her to be released from that. And I hope that me seeing it and accepting and embracing that pain and, you know, the whole trauma that comes with it is going to help her not to, you know, have the same tape in a way.
Yeah, and just the power of your intention in that. It's like you see it, you feel it, and you have an intention. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, yeah, it's personal, but it's important because so many people go for that. I think especially there's still more women that are single parents alone with their child rather than men raising children just on their own. Many women can maybe connect to that and like see, okay, is there a pattern in my family? Has this happened before? Why? And how can I break the pattern? Even if you're in the situation, but you can still, right, dissolve it. Yeah. Right? I just hope so.
Yeah. You need to do the work. That's what we can do.
Yeah, because it's like ongoing work, like with some breaks.
It never ends.
Yeah, with some breaks.
But yeah, it's fascinating because I could see also from my line and also from the collective, maybe, but not even as a child, to be allowed to like be in my emotions and be vulnerable. So I have that with me, and also in school, you know, like a kid, you couldn't cry, you know, show your vulnerability and bringing that into relationship, and not because then it for me was like problems expressing vulnerability, and some problems also expressing my boundaries, and to actually show up and hold myself, but be able to show up with vulnerability.
I mean, it's not easy. Life is not designed to be easy.
And I mean, just that, when we see like, oh, I feel triggered, instead, Mark, you're wrong. Like, it's you. It's all you. It's not, You heal your shit. I don't need to heal my shit.
I don't have any shit.
I don't have any shit. Where's the shit?
What shit?
What shit? Exactly. So, to have some humor about it also. And some days it's just like, I'm not going to do it. But other days it's like, all right, let's step into the game and do the work.
And also, I think it's important for everyone to realize that it's not like one day you're going to sit down, you're going to work through all the traumas, and it's going to get resolved, and you're going to be healed, and everything is great. No, it takes time.
Yeah, they say like enlightenment is just the first step of the process.
Yeah, I guess so.
Like we always got to like walk around in this dualistic world and experience contrast, and that could be rough. But when we're lighter on the inside and we understand our own reactions, and we can better hold ourselves in that and comfort ourselves, and also find people to share with or find ways to release or regulate, then it's so much more freedom, and we don't get reactive in the same sense. And if it happens, we can take it back and then, look
at it a little bit like from another perspective.
Yeah, exactly. And we're not caught in these loops of reaction and reactivity and create more drama.
You said the word loops, the generational loops.
Yeah, exactly. And to see those loops be going like hundreds of thousands of years. Yeah. And then like, okay, no, it stops here. It stops with me.
Yeah. At least for 5 generations. That's what the science says. Right?
All right. I didn't know about that.
Yeah. And then as you said also, before it gets like milder, because obviously if somebody was abused like 2 generations ago, you're going to carry this, but it's not going to be as heavy as for your parents or grandparents, let's say, right?
Yeah.
So the level gets a little bit like the vibration of it gets
hopefully. Yeah.
Hopefully. You know what? There was another thing that I was thinking about, like just before we close, because there are this what this is called, Hellinger's work. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Tell me more.
So, and not everyone is on board with that, especially many psychologists are not, because that works for generational trauma. It's called Constellations. Family Constellations. Yeah. But it's like where people gather and they don't know each other. And then there's one person who facilitates it and connects. Like, you're going to be the father, you're going to be grandfather, like you get into that role. And then work through these generational traumas in that setup with people who you completely don't know.
I love that work.
Oh my God.
It's amazing. I've done some of that work, and for me, it was also amazing. I know I did a constellation where I was supposed to portray a guy's grandfather.
Huh?
And all of a sudden, when I went into and felt the energy, I started to like do like this and like, and like I was very heavy. And that guy was like, afterwards, like, it was just like my grandfather. So it's amazing, because I also seen like Svagito, if you know that guy.
No.
Well, he's doing a lot of that work on stage. And you actually tap into that energy, and it's so fascinating, the healing that happens.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. I think like many people are afraid of that because it's hard to explain.
Yeah.
But I've been like, I didn't do it myself. I was watching it twice, and the energy that I felt in the audience was huge. I felt like in my face, right? Like it was so real. And one of my best friends also did that, and it helped her a lot, I can see. And she said she cannot explain it, and she didn't believe in it, but she cannot explain it. But it was like that. Like, she felt like the emotion of it, like she felt connected to it. She forgot, even when she embodied this energy, she forgot what she was doing.
Yep.
20 minutes later, she's up, like, what happened? Like, yeah, you were laying there for 20 minutes because you were like this. and you were just like forgotten.
Exactly. We need to feel it in our own bodies for it to be true. And I mean, I've also heard about that. Like if you leave a country or your parents leave a country, sometimes you need to do like integration work with that country.
What do you mean by that?
Like, say if you left Italy, for example.
And Poland. And Poland.
You have your whole like ancestral line, and they had their lives lived there. Or maybe if you left all of a sudden or against your will, there's something in your life that wants to pull you back to do some integrational work.
Okay.
So that could be a tip for you today.
Wow. I really need to look at that.
Yeah, I found that fascinating, because then it could also be a rootlessness in this life.
Sure.
But
isn't it like changing the place where you're living? It's going to change a little bit what you're going to experience, what kind of, because like I feel culturally, and we're going to dive into that in other episodes, but like we're so different. And I could feel it myself, like when I'm half Italian, half Polish, and I'm totally carrying a different energy than this place, and we're in Sweden. Well, Sweden, IKEA, and meatballs. I just made it so simple. Sorry, Sweden. But you know, like the energy of this place, I felt like so not in tune with that when I just first arrived here. I felt like, oh my God, everyone's closed. Like, nobody wants to make friends. I'm alone. There's nothing like, and I also live in the countryside, so there's another aspect of not being among people. But I felt like there was such a shift of energy. Like, whereas you live in Italy, you just go outside, maybe you go and grab a coffee, you make a friend, you know? And here was so different. And I feel like changing also places can be beneficial for you, because like I start to appreciate outdoors life. Go into the forest. Stare at the water or something, you know?
But I gotta say I love what Teal Swan said about Sweden. You heard about that one, right? Like we used to, because it's so cold here, that we used to be forced to huddle up, you know, in caves to keep the warmth. And if you're like 20 people in a cave, you can't be like Greeks or Italians, because you end up like killing each other, you know? There'll only be corpses left in the spring. So what comes out in is that you're keeping your shit together. You close it down a little bit, and you tend to be a people pleaser, and you tend to not be so emotional.
Shut down, like your emotions are.
You're a little bit shut down, But
that's what I felt. That's what I felt when I moved in here. But I know this is off topic, but it's just feels like when you move to another cultural background, it can also bring some other stuff that you might be willing to work with. And I feel so comfortable now with being alone. I think I couldn't work with that in Italy. I'm sorry. It was just not possible, at least where I was living.
Let's explore that more in another topic, like with containment and container, and exposing ourselves in different structures or containments.
We should totally do that. We're going to do that.
Yes.
But to summarize a little bit, like, what's our main message here? What do we want to say, like, in the end?
First awareness, then gather knowledge, allow yourself to feel it, allow to see how that plays out in your life now and in your relationships. And then when you see that and you feel that almost like shame, sit with that. And then see that you're not passing it on to your neighbors, to your children, to your co-workers,
your cat,
to your dogs.
Okay, that's awesome. I think that's important, and know that there's always a way to work with it. So it's through coaching, it's through therapy, the arboring, which is amazing, and all other sorts of ways that you can work with it and connect with that and embrace that.
Exactly. You can start with the mental, but then also work with the emotional, you know, and also the physical body, and like do a deeper journey on it. But see what you're called to do.
Thank you so much for being here with us and joining in. Hit the subscribe button, don't forget, and hope to see you soon. Thank you so much.
See you soon.
Such a pleasure.
Thank you.